we would expect this. We want this, anybody who will try this at some point will come to this difficulty. So the being or the awareness or the source from where the attention comes, or the presence or the consciousness or the Atman, all of this refer to the same thing. It's the only thing that is not a thing. And so that's why it's unpinpointable. It's not like a thought you can see, oh yeah, there's this image of my grandmother, or this voice just said this, like, oh, I don't like what's happening. Or, you know, it's pinpointable no matter how subtle. All of these are objects, the thought, the sensations in the belly, the sound, all of these, they are objects, meaning that it's like, here it is, bam, even if it's subtle. Yeah, and you're right, we are so used to putting that the attention comes out from where it's coming from and goes towards somethingness. And so when we hear the instructions to be aware of the silence of being, or to be aware of being, or whatever, then this habit of going for it, okay, all right, I'm going to do it. But then it's like, where? It's like, it is like trying to be aware of the invisible man. Or like now, let's say in your room where you are, or in the room where we are, it's very easy to be aware of objects. But we are overlooking the space, the invisible space. But it's space, it's always here. So in this metaphor, imagine that this is a metaphor that Rupert Spira uses to help us comprehend this a little bit. So the sense of presence or awareness, it is like the space in this room, but the space is conscious. Imagine that the space in this room is conscious. And first brother, or mindfulness, would be the space in this room is conscious of the chairs, and is conscious of maybe some breeze in it, or is conscious of us. That would be mindfulness. And the second brother is like the space, the conscious space in this room is conscious of itself. Yeah, so the difficulty is that which is aware, the being, is not an object, and we can't perceive the being in the same way we perceive objects. So it's impossible to catch it like that. However, there is another channel that's a subtle channel. Like if I ask you, are you aware now? Are you aware? We ask everybody, are you aware now? Not too esoteric, just simple, you know, like, are you aware? We all have this like, yeah. So there's some subtle knowing. Usually this works is that through various techniques or efforts or attempts, as well as through higher reasoning, just simply understanding that one cannot put the attention. The attention is also comes out to go. And so one cannot put this attention arising. We need to put it towards where it's coming from. So it's not possible. So understanding that, which is very frustrating. It's like, well, what the fuck are we doing here then? Okay, but at the same time, realizing experientially that everything we are aware of is because there is something which is aware of it. So the only thing that is constant in our experience is this invisible, silent presence. So although it is invisible, is the most constant thing, which is not a thing. And we are that. Basically, that is what we call I. You are already that. That's the bad news. Francie will say the bad news is that you can't catch it. You can't. The good news is that you are already that. And okay, through practices or insight, or especially as the thought stream slows down and this striving, controlling relaxes, there's some glimpse or revelations. One is revealed, like, or sometimes could be in a psychedelic journey, would be like or for breath work, all the static stops, and then there's obvious that, okay, but there's this emness. It's so obvious, this emness, so that is revealed. And then this is what is called a glimpse. We have a glimpse, and that glimpse can be accompanied by yummy emotions or energy, like, whoa, like with trumpets or spiritual chocolate in the mouth. So it can be juicy and yummy and pleasurable, or it can be very subtle and almost nothing special. But that glimpse, it's more like the consciousness became aware of itself. And that has a very strong power. It's going to keep working in ourselves. So this, what you're describing, Wendy, it is like a classic stage or difficulty or on the path. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the practice itself? Because I think this is maybe where I don't know, getting caught, because I remember the second brother being described from someone else as like, attention or consciousness making a U-turn and looking back on itself. And I don't know if that's the same thing, but I'm putting a lot of effort into like trying to see that which is seeing. And I don't know, and it feels very intense. And I almost get a headache from it a little bit. But I mean, if that's like, it's an interesting thing. It's very energetic, like practicing it that way, but I'm just not sure if I'm doing it right.
This, yeah, I know I was trying to do this, and it's very frustrating and effortful, and it's not possible. This U-turn, it's a little bit like, there's not a metaphor in the teachings that actually this one that is trying to, it's like a John Wayne in the movie is trying to become aware of the screen in which the movie appears. And it cannot do it. It's going to be always frustrated. It doesn't have access to it. John Wayne in the movie doesn't have access to the aware screen in which the movie is playing. So it's almost like there's too much effort from the mind, so to say, too much effort, and that in itself is a problem. A more useful exercise is to, let's say, with we suggested this exercise in the past, to, as you notice that there's this thought form that we are lost in imagination, and it fades away. It just fades away. You catch it and then it fades away. And no thought has arisen yet. Yet we are. So somehow that is more, can give one a glimpse. Anyway, Peter, I think you, would you like to say something on this?
Yes. Several things come to mind. I like very much this analogy of the space in the room. So the first brother is, and I think this will help explain perhaps what Wendy's asking a little bit, in addition to what you said, Mihai. So the space, first of all, this space, empty space, which is akin to our inner being, cannot see itself. The space in the room, when we look around, it cannot see itself. However, it can be aware as itself. This is, so it's not that we become aware of awareness. Awareness becomes aware as itself. So the space in the room is looking out. And then what Wendy is suggesting, I think this is what she meant, is now suddenly all the attention is on the objects in the room. And it's as though the objects in the room are trying to turn around and be aware of the space in the room. And that's what Mihai is explaining as that's impossible, because it's empty and it cannot be seen. And actually, the furniture in the room, the objects both in our outer world and in our inner world, they cannot actually see it. So another way to say this perhaps is the first brother requires a certain effort. It is, let's call it controlled looking, or we can even call it conscious looking. We're consciously now looking at things. The second brother is much less of an effort. It's more of a realization. You could say it's an effort combined with a realization, or you could say it's an effort that yields to the realization. And it can be quite simple, just that you're here in the room. Simply, I'm looking at things in the room. I see all these objects. And now what I want to do is simply focus, I guess you could say, or just realize more. I'm in the room. I'm here. I'm looking at all these things. And this is describing it in a physical way, but that's perfectly legitimate in the beginning. I promise you, if you keep doing that, something else will start to happen. This awareness will deepen. And then you will realize that Peter sitting in the room is also an object. But that's going a little bit farther. However, what I wanted to say is this. The first brother is a concentrated effort, looking at objects, making an effort to look. The second is more the realization that you are here looking. And it's less of an effort. It's more just the realization you're here looking. And the third brother is when both come into play. And now the reason this one is the hardest is because it doesn't require an effort. Effort gets in the way of this. Now there's the realization that you're not only consciously looking, and you're not only aware of being the source of this looking, you are the conscious looking. You are both. Now, I know that can seem hard to fathom intellectually, but just bear in mind, if we are making an effort, as Wendy's describing, to look back at awareness, it will be frustrating and it will be exhausting and it will use a lot of energy, because it's impossible. We cannot, it's coming, let's say it's an effort coming from the wrong place. Gosh, I sure wish it was easier to describe. It's really so simple in the end, but in the beginning, I think it's safe to say, keep it simple. The second brother is simply the realization you're in the room. You're the one doing the looking. And when it's the same when you're looking inside, you're the one looking at these thoughts. And you can know that. You can realize that. But this awareness won't, it takes time, like you could say, for it to realize what it is, to realize that it is. Another thing is when we are making effort, if you are making this effort for the, let's call it the second brother, notice that you can observe that about yourself. That becomes an object you're looking at. You're looking at this effort that's being made to realize awareness. It sounds funny, but so something is aware that you're making the effort to be aware of awareness, and something is aware that you're becoming tired. It's tiring you out. But what we're talking about is it's the whole enchilada.